Greetings, everyone. I'm Rasa Martin Saroma. I'm a community artist. I'm here to perform the libation ceremony as what African people do when they formally come together. They usually perform libation, and as customary, I'll be using water, pouring it over a plant and pouring to the four directions. So we honor our ancestors, those who have come before us, who have paved a way, and it made it possible for us to be here today. Because of their existence, we now exist. And so I'm going to start pouring to the south, to all those ancestors from the southern part of the world, any part of the southern part of any part of the diaspora, the African diaspora. We pour to them. We pour to the great great grandmothers, the great great grandfathers, great great grandparents, the artists, the farm workers, the activists, the freedom fighters, the royalty, the exile royalty, the factory workers, the educators, whatever capacity they existed and made a way, like Malcolm say, by any means necessary. We pour to those ancestors of the South. Ashe. I'm going to pour to the ancestors of the North, of any part of the northern hemisphere of the African diaspora. The agriculturalists, the root doctors, the midwives, the elders, that the pillars of the community, the bus drivers, the whatever capacity they lived and served in, we pour to those ancestors of the North. Ashe.
Sure.
I'm going to pour to the ancestors of the East. Any part of the Eastern Hemisphere, of any part of the African diaspora. We pour to the mailroom workers, the school teachers, the college professors, the engineers, the physicians, the workers of any blue collar jobs and white collar jobs. We pour to those ancestors of the Eastern Hemisphere. Ashe. I'm going to pour to the ancestors of the West, of any part of the Western Hemisphere, of any part of the African diaspora. We're going to pour to the actors, to the drama coaches, to the builders, the architects, the maintenance workers, the organizers, the voting rights activists. We're going to pour and acknowledge those ancestors in any capacity they lived and worked and existed. We pour to those ancestors of the East. Ashe.
Jay.
Now we pour to honor our ancestors that we can call by name, to acknowledge them and bring them present here with us and always, that they may guide and be a part of our lives for the positive. We call them by name. I'm going to call out my grandma Minnie. You can call out any person you wish to call now. Ashe, Grandma Minnie,
my granny, my grandpa.
Grandparents, siblings.
Grandparents.
Ashe.
Okay.
Ashe.
Big brother.
Yeah,
Ashe.
it's unknown.
13.
Ashe. We could also call out communal ancestors, you know, those notable people in our community, the Malcolms, the Harriets, the Kings, the Sojourners, the Frederick Douglass, you know, all those people that paved the way, the Queen Mother Moores, the Fannie Lou Hamers, the Demar Vessies, the Nat Turners, you know, all those people who struggled and put their lives on the line to make sure that we had our rights, our freedoms, and a better life. Ashe.
Jay.
So I'm going to end it now. And any ancestors that you have in mind that you didn't feel the need to call out, but you have them in your heart, we also acknowledge them right now. And we'll pour one last Ashe. Ashe.
Ashe.
Ashe.
Thank you.
All right. Should I go ahead with prayer, Rhonda?
Yes.
Okay. Let me just say first, just thankful to be here. My name is Derek Rogers, known by some in the Milwaukee community as Baba. Just wanted to mention, as we see these wonderful young Black men gathered today, I used the term earlier as a smorgasbord of power and gifts and life-affirming possibilities represented here. And also want to say that, you know, oftentimes when we talk about work on behalf of the people, on behalf of God's people, and on behalf of our people, there's sometimes what we could say are seasons in that work, a spring season, a summer season, a fall, and even a winter. And even here, we have many of those seasons represented. You know, I'm thankful for the spring season of those coming in and wanting to do all they can for the betterment and empowerment and self-determination of the people that we love in our community. I'm thankful for the summer, those who are in the thick of it right now, you know, and I'm looking at y'all right now, and I'm still seeing that strong glow and power, and you haven't given up despite everything out there beating you down. That's a blessing. And then those of us in the fall, I talked about myself and Amar, whose main job and focus should be to support those who are in their summer. There may be some things that we can still model and demonstrate for short periods of time, but our key is to be a guide by the side and being those that make sure you get the best out of what you have. So we're just going to go into prayer now. Gracious and merciful Father, we just want to thank you and give you the honor and the glory. We just thank you for this opportunity today to share in community, to learn from one another. And as we look at this King holiday, we just ask that everything that we say and do go forth, both, of course, in the spirit of God, but also in the spirit of the great man that we celebrate on these days. A man who celebrated, who lived and embodied justice,
Yes.
who embodied love, who embodied freedom, who embodied radical change agency on behalf of someone outside of himself. So there's a humility there that we even thank you for on this day, Lord. So as we go into this conversation, just allow that everything that emits from our mouths be of you. Let it be clear, concise, and something that the people can benefit from. We just thank you. We praise you. We give you the honor. In the matchless name of Jesus, we pray. Amen.
Amen.
Amen. Thank you so much to both Amar for starting us off with the libation. I think it's always wonderful to ground ourselves, knowing that we are not the beginning. We had those that began before us, and that we can remind ourselves of that, those who ran the race before we did, but then also to remember that we do have a future and that we're part of cultivating what that will be for others. So I'm happy that we are all gathered here today, you beautiful Black men here with us to lift up and remember the life and legacy of Dr. King, but also hopefully talk about ways in which you plan to leave your own legacy and create pathways for others that will continue in liberation for all of our people. Thank you, Baba, for the prayer and for the reflection that you gave. I really appreciate having you be here today and sharing your presence and your wisdom, but also the years of work that we've been doing together with Race and Faith. So I just appreciate your consistent support of the work that I do and always lending in your thoughtfulness and your encouragement. It's just priceless to have somebody like you to lean on and talk to, and to, even at times be in a wilderness with, as we try to figure out how to continuously call our people to freedom and help our people live into freedom.
Yes.
And so to all of you today, we're here to really live into the title of this event, Something to Say. We all have something to say, no matter what our age is, whether we are the youngest in the room or the oldest in the room. Each voice matters. Each voice is important, especially as we tackle topics like racism and anti-Semitism. Unfortunately, from generation to generation, racism and anti-Semitism continues to travel with us, meaning that every generation, whether you're the 5-year-old, 15, 25, 35, 45, 55, 75, the Lord bless you to live to be 100, you know something about that topic, one of those isms, right? Unfortunately. But I think the key is all of us communicating together, all of us being able to share our own experiences, and then think about ways that we can creatively and powerfully change, that we won't have generation after generation still dealing with these types of isms. So that's what Something to Say aims to do, and what we've been doing since 2021, creating educational resources, having panel discussions like this. We have learning modules that we've done in the past. This year, we did something quite different, streamlined it a lot, where I just focused this time with having the panel discussion be Black males, which is very different than what we've done in the past. Was a diverse panel discussion where there was voices from various racial groups, various religious backgrounds, and ages all together. And this time I wanted to just solely focus on the Black male experience. And part of that is because of the political season, just to be honest. With our last political cycle, Black men were a lot of topic of conversation, was a lot of conversation going in ways that I didn't really appreciate. And so I wanted to be able to give a variety of Black men an opportunity to share their voice and have themselves be seen and represented in the ways that they want to be seen and heard in the ways that they want to be heard. And so that's why this year, Something to Say, and the panel discussion that we're having is just solely Black males from teenager into the more seasoned ages, if you will, maybe the fall, if I'm going to use your analogy, Baba, maybe more men that's into the fall of their life. And just really lift that up. I just think that's important. Again, when we think about this work and we want to highlight those voices that have been marginalized, I believe that the Black male voice has been one of those voices that's been marginalized throughout this American experience. And so with Something to Say this year, we want to do that. In addition to creating this panel experience where we feature Black male voices, I also put out there a process for folks to nominate community champions. This will be Black men, Black boys in your community who you feel live into the legacy of Dr. King. And so I want to lift up a couple of those voices that were nominated. We had two men that I know, which was cool to see their names come through. Michael Adams, who is the executive director of JobWorks Milwaukee. So I just want to congratulate him for being seen on his work, and someone thought enough of him to nominate him as a voice and as a person who's living into Dr. King's legacy. And the other was Pastor Walter Lanier, who is a current pastor, former director of AALM. May not have all those initials right, but he too was one of the men that was lifted up and nominated to be seen as a community champion. So I'm excited about that. And I do hope this is something that I can continue doing into the future, highlighting and spotlighting those Black men who folks feel are doing the work now. And this is not that you just have to be an older male. It's open for people to nominate boys too, as young as 8 years old. So I think as we look at our community and look around the folks in our community, we'll see that there are many of us, many Black males out there that are still doing the work, that embody liberation, that embody hope, that share their faith, and that want to be of service to their community. So thank you for that. Just want to shout that out. So now to our panelists and our panel questions that we'll have to go over for the next hour in conversation. I want to give each of our panelists an opportunity to introduce themselves to you all just briefly. Now, we don't need everybody's life story. Each panelist will have about a minute to share your name and share what drew you to say, yes, I want to participate in this panel discussion. Why is this important to you today? So share your name and why something like this is important to you today. And we can start with Kenwan. And then from there, I'm not going to appoint people. I just want you to pop in and speak up. If I have to come back in and ask someone to go next, I will. But let's just see how far we can get with each person. Just popping in and sharing, again, your name and then why you were interested in participating in today's event.
Yeah, absolutely. I hope you all can hear me well. Good morning, everybody. Rhonda, again, awesome work in the space and for everything that you're doing and just kind of bringing us together here. My name is Kenwan Flynn. I'm a father, husband, and Christian by faith. And I work in employee relations. It's my educational background and also my current career choice as well. Also like to consider myself an investor. And, really just honored to be a part of this conversation. I think that the topic of race in and of itself is still a critical topic, even though this country has been in existence for many, many years in the world in itself. This is a topic that's still plaguing society, and it's not relegated to a specific time in history like some would like us to believe or some currently believe. It's not relegated to certain corners of this world, but it's still currently a reality, and it's because of a pervasive mindset that isn't beneficial to any race or any group of people. We need to be ready and willing to engage it at all times. So that's my reason for wanting to participate in this discussion. And again, I'm thankful for the invite.
My name is Derek Rogers. I'm a retired educator and a retired public health based gun violence prevention specialist. I'm the founder of the Exodus Academy and the Exodus Maroon Collective, and also the lead facilitator and founder of the Milwaukee Black Liberation Theology Project. I am a husband, married for 28 years. I am the father of 3 girls, the godfather of 3 more young ladies, girls, and grandfather of 3 children. So it's 333, keeping me busy.
Right on, right on. Peace of love. I'll slide in there too. My name is Joe Davis. I'm a man of many hats, literally and metaphorically. So I'm an artist and community organizer. I do music and theater. Most people know me as a poet. I use poetry to power possibility. I live in the Twin Cities, North Minneapolis, Minnesota. A lot of people know it as the home of Prince, but I think the world kind of came to know us as the home of the George Floyd uprisings. And so during that time, I was active in creating like healing spaces, because I believe that art is a catalyst for these conversations and for spaces of healing and transformation. That's the reason why I'm an artist. And the reason why I joined this conversation is because I see King and his legacy still being relevant. We got to continue to carry it forward. He wasn't just talking about, desegregation and voters' rights. He was talking about human rights and building this multi-faith, multi-generational, multiracial coalition of healing justice. And we still need that today, now more than ever, right? And so I want to be part of making that happen. That's why I'm here, and I'm really honored and blessed and joyous to be in a space with fellow Black men, because we don't have too many spaces like this. So I'm glad to get in this conversation with y'all.
Absolutely.
I can join in. Oh, go ahead. Sorry.
Okay. Appreciate you throwing the alley-oop, Aaron. I'm Brian Mays. I'm 27, from the city of Milwaukee. By trade, I do commercial real estate development within the city of Milwaukee and nationally. Really focus on community development that target the social determinants of health. Personally, I'm a father of a 3-month-old baby girl and soon-to-be husband. I was able to, go from Marquette University High School and be blessed to receive a full scholarship to UW-Madison, where I really perfected my craft in a double major in real estate and economics. And because of that path, that's where I met Rhonda. Shout out to Rhonda for being the great convener here, because I think it's a critical conversation for all of us to have today. I'm extremely passionate just about intergenerational spaces and having a dialogue across, different platforms and voices. Just especially with Black men, this is like, I feel at peace, and just having like our walls down to be able to speak about a topic that's as critical, as race, and how Black men feel comfortable in our space and how we can continue to drive, Dr. King's legacy, with his day coming up. So excited for the conversation again, and nice to meet you all.
Appreciate that, good brother. Good morning, everybody. My name's Aaron Bledsoe. Proud Milwaukee native, servant leader, storyteller by nature. Professionally, I work in communications, and I've just always been just very passionate about voices and our experiences in a way that they are expressed and delivered to one another. And as we have this conversation, especially around racism and the legacy of Dr. King, we know that narratives are not always truthful, but they are purposeful. And with that, I am very blessed to be here with you all. I never turned down an opportunity to break bread with good brothers. Thanks again to Rhonda. As always, if we don't do it, it won't get done. So thanks to Rhonda, to our brothers, and, just the Black women who continue to uplift us. I think it's just important for us to be seen, to be visible. A lot of us are suffering. A lot of brothers are suffering in silence too. And it's just important for us to be a lighthouse to start off. And when we find each other, we make things happen. So I'm excited for the conversation.
I'll jump in on the dead space there. Brad Anthony Bernard, visual artist, educator. I've been blessed enough to work with all ages, from grade school to elderly, as well as developmentally disabled and mentally ill populations. I'm also a believer that the arts are a healing component. They're also the game changer as far as education, and really makes the difference in community. it's also the great equalizer. I think art is a liberator for all. And I think it's important, even though it's something that's often neglected in the education system. I think it can also be the gateway to many other career opportunities that can inspire youth to not only embrace their creativity, but then also have the confidence and the esteem to be able to move forward with their dreams. I agree with everything that's been said. It's good to be amongst the black steel in the hours of chaos, you know, and we can sharpen each other. So thank you, Rhonda, for the invite, and respect what you do in the community here. And I think it's hopefully the first of many conversations that can be had. Thank you.
My name is Isaiah. I'm 14 years old, and I'm glad to be during this discussion, surrounded by people who love me and the same skin color as me.
Peace, family. My name is Jakai. I'm here, I want to say, first it's an honor, and a privilege to be amongst, brothers working, to improve, the quality of life in our community. I was connected with Sister Rhonda by brother Derek Rogers, Baba. Over this past year, I've been working along the lines of an initiative called Intergenerational Talking Circles, where the goal is to bridge the gap between the elders and the youth. So on this platform, it's an honor that, we're working along those lines as well, but also, in the name of, the brother, Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., I'm a student of, Elijah Muhammad, a student of Minister Farrakhan. And, as the brother Joe said before we went live, I'm a student of the Christ movement, and that resonated with me. So I want to throw that out there again, and Christ, he said, the truth will set you free, So as we working, for the liberation of Black people, which is, one of an aspect of the foundation of, Martin Luther King Jr., it's an honor to be here. It's an honor to work along those lines as well.
That's everybody then. Thank you all for introducing yourselves and helping us to get rolling, to get started. One of the things I've been, as I mentioned earlier, just interested about and more curious about, and I want to hear what you all are thinking lately. And what I mean lately, I would say actually for years, might not be the right way to describe it, but Black men have been often chided. And I'm curious about what you all think about that experience of political figures, people in entertainment, even when we get to things that happen, maybe something serious may happen in the city, a violent incident, and you may hear even religious leaders or people on the police force say things about what Black men need to do to get it together. Again, another way of just reprimanding or chiding or talking to Black men in a way, in my opinion, that reminds me of the boy era, when Black men weren't addressed as men, but fully grown Black men like Baba or Brad being called boy. And I think it's that chiding that we hear and we see today is, for me, is reminiscent of this idea that the Black man is still a boy needing to be consistently reprimanded. So what do you all think about that, and particularly how that has played out in the political sphere? I would like 2 or 3 of you to tackle that question. and I'll give you about a minute to address it. You takers? Aaron, go ahead.
Yeah, a few thoughts come to mind just from a media studies perspective. Throughout history, Black people, specifically Black men, have been put into certain boxes. We're often known as the brute, being extremely savage or violent, otherwise often sexualized too. And I think that that is systemic, that's purposeful, because when you take the humanity away from Black men, you take away our wholeness. And to your point, in the political sphere, it's really hard for us to unite or to really see the advantage or the just the goodness of being led by one another, seeing the humanity in us, because then that's when we really have power. And I think, to that perspective, just addressing the entire subject for today, just around racism, racism transcends. Like, none of us have asked for it, but it doesn't matter how much money you make. It doesn't matter if you have a college degree. That's where you live. What you do, what your family looks like, it's always rooted back to the color of our skin. And I think that is a burden that we did not ask for, but that's what we live with daily. And a lot of that transpires. I think in addition, the word says our people perish for lack of knowledge. So it's very easy to mold people's minds when they're not educating themselves. So not to call out any particular political figures, but there are some figures that have a huge following, people who do not educate themselves. So it's very easy to throw these different images and these archetypes out about us, and they just immediately eat it up. And I think that's just where we are now and have been for quite some time. But those are just my initial thoughts.
Thank you, Aaron. Who else wants to answer that question about the chiding of Black men?
I'll just jump in real quick. To piggyback on what Aaron said, three components, accountability, discernment, and productivity. And I think oftentimes there's a lack of accountability due to being poorly educated in some instances, or a lack of discernment, even if you're a victim of circumstance that's beyond your control. And so just like salvation is each individual's responsibility, I think accountability and discernment is for all of us to engage in, because what we see in some of these celebrities and some of these athletes, what you have is grown, wealthy boys, not to use it in a derogatory sense of what you mentioned earlier, Rhonda, but the idea of a lack of emotional intelligence and maturity, as well as unresolved traumas, and so you take that cocktail and you shake it up and serve it up. You have a number of Black men of all ages that are victims of circumstance based on a lack of accountability and emotional intelligence. And so, not blaming the victim, but I think there's oftentimes when we want to play victim, but there's a certain level of accountability that needs to occur, as well as discernment to your choice making.
That's good. That's good. I'll say too as well, King talked about that, a lot of those elements that you brothers just kind of mentioned too, and specifically, Aaron, to your point, this intentional sort of stripping away of the humanness of, Black men intentionally, right? And this effort to sort of, relegate us or reduce us or to make it easier to sort of, approach us or to treat us in certain ways. And I really think that, the chiding of Black men specifically at this point, given the countless number of achievements that we've made as a race, the proof, the clear, proof that we can, lead or serve or, be leaders in our own regard in certain ways. I think the reality of this sort of disapproval of Black men for any legitimate reason has kind of like been, it's reduced. It's pointless. And I think it's a really lazy effort. It's a miseducation there, but I also think that it's intentional, right? I think it's used to weaponize. It's a weaponized effort to keep us reduced and relegated to a certain point. I think oftentimes in the political diaspora, and even in other ways, the chiding or disapproval of Black men is something that can, it helps to benefit another race or other races, right? To keep us limited in certain ways can be extremely beneficial, to be honest with you. So I think that it's intentional in that way as well. So I think it's convenient for those who are seeking to maintain a certain level of control or power. And because of that, even if you know or you understand that what you're saying is completely false, or even if you don't know, in a lot of cases or instances, I think it serves to another's benefit to keep us limited or bound in certain ways. So I thought about that when I thought about that question as well.
Yeah, and I'll let it very quickly here. I think you're right. I think the chiding is rooted in fear, and it's been a societal issue that dates back or predates the civil rights era, right? I think, back when we saw the flourishing Black Wall Streets, in Oklahoma and other major epicenters, right? I think we saw the white race see how strong the Black family unit was, and they saw that as a threat. And then you have to go through institutional powers, which then in turn, they had to decentralize the Black family. So you see, through some of the HUD programs, some of these other different programs, where essentially they want to carve out the Black man and be like, hey, HUD, governmental assistance, we're going to help only the Black women and children. Black men, we don't need them. We're going to cast them aside due to the fear of, if we're a collective unit, we're going to be so powerful, where I think the power shift in terms of who really is going to be running the future of the country and have, call the shots, have the influence, it was going to be us. And I think that was a fear tactic that we're still seeing today. So I guess my question to the group is, how do Black men unionize with each other to say, hey, we know as a collective, there's just about nothing we can't do. And we cause that much fear in terms of being able to change the social constructs of society. How do we take that today and make sure we're changing and talk about legacy, right? The legacy what we leave behind for our kids and our grandkids, and making sure that we are truly the Black family unit and leaving that as a norm.
I love that, Brian. Go ahead. I'll let the guys, if you want to feedback into that, sure, answering that question. I love it. And I will also just want to put on a little piece in thinking about politics again. What is that message? What's the messaging that the political parties that are seeking our vote, and even in our local politics, what is that messaging that needs to be out there to really engage the Black man and respect the Black man's voice and vote? How do people need to what needs to happen or what needs to be done? But yes, go ahead. Brian, I love that you pitched the question out there. Let me get some other voices in here who haven't. Jakai or Joe or Baba, you want to come in on the next layer of questioning?
I mean, I have some thoughts for sure. I see Brad raise his hand too, so I feel like he probably has a point that he wants to connect with what was just said, perhaps. I don't know. Yeah, all I was gonna say is like a lot of this narrative out there about chiding and disapproval. I know that we could trace that back to like the first encounters of Africans with European colonism, right? There's always been this kind of false sense of superiority as paternalism, and it's really absurd. Like, I mean, we've seen the pattern throughout history. We can trace it, but like, I know it's caused a lot of harm and it's been violent, but there's some instances where it's almost laughable because it's so absurd. It's like, really, like the superiority, that's not real. We know that's whack, that's bogus. And so sometimes I can't help but laugh at it. I'm like, if y'all over here trying to criticize me and my people, like, I'm just minding my business. That ain't got nothing to do with me over there. I'm gonna be over here with my community building. I think that's an important point that I want to make is like, I think we got to stay rooted and grounded in knowledge of self and in who we are and on what's possible for us, and keep that type of education and the type of community organizing and legacy building at the forefront of where we're going, because that's what's going to strengthen us and empower us to really just create the future that we want, that flourishing. And so, yes, there's always going to be that type of false narrative out there, but we have to have a counter narrative that's even louder and more powerful. Yeah.
I have no more to add to that, Rhonda. That's rich. That's good stuff that's been said.
Yeah.
What
I think
is
also-
the counter narrative? What's the counter narrative? And I think that's what Brian was putting out there. What is the thing that Black men need to say? How do you champion? What is that collective voice that can be put out there as Black men seek to make their issues and voices known? What's important?
Well,
And
I
Go
would
ahead,
say
Brad.
to that briefly. Oh, can you hear me?
Oh yeah, go ahead, Baba.
Okay. Yeah. No, I was just going to say, I could say just briefly to that. I think it is important that however we approach it, that we not be reactionary. And what I mean by that is we don't want to get too consumed in. I don't want to be saying like this, you know, how your mom used to say, don't be caring what they think about you when they talking about you like that. But there is a systemic and collective reality to that I think as a people and as Black men that we need to embrace as we, to Brian's point, begin to develop our own counter narratives. And oftentimes our counter narrative is to embrace some of the larger meta narratives that are available to us. Some of them we can find in our faith. You know, if we see, for example, if we go to the Christian faith and we see Jesus as a revolutionary figure, as a Black Messiah, as a heroic figure who walked in power, who walked in liberation, oftentimes we're able to pull from that a sense of our own self-determined action and moving and talking. And when we can appropriate those things in our actions and in the things that we do, that's one way to counter. And I know we may talk about faith later, but I just think that's a critical part of it.
Yeah, I got to
Yeah.
add that just
Yeah.
one little taste, one little thing. So remember our history, the Reconstruction era proved to us that the genius was in us. We made such great strides during Reconstruction, but right now, civics has been taken from the schools. You know, I think civics should be taught within the church to the youth. I think there should be debate skills developed from within the church, starting with biblical topics and then moving into more relevant topics of the culture itself. And then along with that, investing in those civic-minded and aware individuals. Because right now we don't have a political party that represents our needs and desires and wants. And then along with that, I think we're at a point right now where unconditional unity has to take place, because I know we're going to get to it later with the Jewish community and everything. They have unconditional unity, and we have yet to revisit that.
Yeah. That's good. That's good. You know, I think about that too as well. I think that the counter narrative is likely going to have to be, and even as I think about King's legacy and his Christian faith, you know, it arguably will have to be rooted in this sort of moral compass sort of focus. Like, we have to know who we are and whose we are, right? And for my Christian believers out there, you know, we can ground that in the truth of the word that says we're made in the likeness and the image of God, right? Our creator. With that, that's our grounding, right? That is the original narrative, right? That we've been trying to argue that since the beginning, right? Of this sort of horrendous and horrific sort of history that Black people have had in the diaspora of America here. And I think that it has to be rooted there first, to Brad's point and to Baba's point, right? A faith-rooted narrative that says that, hey, I deserve all things that are good because I am made in the image of the Creator. And I think beyond that, it's the narrative is look at what we continue to do despite the forces against us. Look at what how we continue to persevere and how we continue to persist despite the challenges that we face, right? And King's life was a thorough representation of this sort of continued persistence in the face really of evil. And, you know, we have to continue to lift up stories, realities, and reminders, right? The testimonies of those who have decided to say, hey, you know what, we know that this is rough. We know that the odds continue to be stacked against us, but we're going to continue to persevere and persist, and that there is hope on the other side of that. So I think that that is the primary narrative. And I think beyond that, we can get into, you know, some of those more specific spaces, specific arguments or specific narrative focuses, whether that be, you know, class or career or, you know, roles or, you know, roles as gatekeepers that we serve in. We talk about how we truly influence authority or have or walk in authority to ensure that certain things, certain ideas, laws, policies no longer persist. So I think that there are sort of more smaller meta narratives, but they I think will first have to come out or come through this primary narrative of that we're made in God's image, and because of that, we deserve the same level of respect as anyone else.
With that, I'm going to move into, which is perfect segue for me to move into the conversation around compassion. I've been doing a lot of thinking about what it will take for us as a collective of people to move forward and get that liberation we ultimately seek. And currently in our current political context and some of the divisions that surround it and the ways that I feel we will need to take care of ourselves over the next 4 years, particularly as Black people, that word compassion comes to me. How are we extending compassion to others? But how is that compassion being extended to us? Because I think where you can have that empathy and experience that kind of care, and knowing that someone has your back, it can take you leaps and bounds when times are hard. And we know in our country right now, there is a loneliness epidemic. Many people feel alone without community. And that can be dangerous, as we see with the rise with the serial shootings and such, the rise of suicide within our community, the rise of suicide with Black men. How do we extend compassion? So I'm wondering, what are your all thoughts on what it was when you last experienced compassion? When did someone has compassion been extended to you? I would like to venture it has, since you are here. But when was the last time you felt that you experienced compassion? And when was the last time you gave a compassionate response to someone who needed it?
I think I can start with just a little bit of that, Rhonda. I think it's important for us to understand that compassion has an agency and an action component to it. I think oftentimes we mistake compassion, you know, for sympathy or for just caring about someone, when compassion, you know, places us in a position to want to do something about or take next steps to relieve or alleviate some of the ills that an individual or a collective may be dealing with. I just think about how particularly when it comes to Black men, I'm thinking about the matrix right now. I think oftentimes we do a lot of work for some of our brothers and our youth and community, and we want to go down to their level, be there with them, do some things for them, speak a word, have a listening ear. but I think from that matrix, to draw on that analogy, I think it's critical that you can convince Neo to take the red pill. But if you're not going to be Morpheus with Neo and walk him through all that comes with that decision to take the red pill, then sometimes it's almost better to let him stay with that blue pill, because that can be dangerous and it can lead to a lot of maladaptive understandings and attitudes. So we've got to continue further with those Neos, with those individuals that we're being compassionate with. And part of that compassion is being a powerful advocate and teaching them how to overcome a lot of the trauma and the things that they're going through, and helping them to understand that a lot of that overcoming is understanding things from a systemic and institutional level, as well, as opposed to simply a deficit model of looking at things. So I think compassion, we have to walk more with our people, as opposed to just opening them up and saying, hey, this is what happened to you. How do we take them and walk them through to that next level? Because oftentimes if we don't, the trauma that they endured oftentimes ends up re-traumatizing them. So we have to be careful of that.
Yeah, I wanna kind of go with that flow too. I'm reflecting on, all the times I've had people walk with me in that manner, like been on my journey. I have lots of mentors and teachers and people in my life who made me who I am. Like I always say, borrowing some of the words of Dr. Cornel West, he says, I am who I am because somebody loved me, right? I am who I am because I was loved into existence, my community. This idea of Ubuntu, the South African ethic that says I am because we are. A person is a person to other people. And I think that's really strong, not only in our culture, but Dr. King talked about that a lot. He talked about Ubuntu, he talked about love, he talked about compassion. That was his whole, that was the foundation, the root of everything he did, right? And how do we carry forward that legacy in our own lives? And the only reason why I've been able to do that is because of my ancestors and because of my family and my community. And so I have a sense of duty and obligation and responsibility to offer that to other people as well. I think that's transformative. King would say that love is the most radical, revolutionary, transformative force in the universe, right? And so that changes the whole game right there when we're able to tap into that power right there. So shout out to all the mentors and teachers and the village that's making it happen.
Thank you for that. I love that. Let me pull in Isaiah, the youngest members of the panel, age 14. Isaiah, when have you experienced compassion or someone being nice to you, showing you some type of empathy or kindness? And when have you done that towards another person? And why do you think that matters in relationship to this conversation on Dr. King?
I think the last time someone showed compassion to me was at school. The teachers at my school showed much compassion for the students, and especially me. I think when I showed compassion to someone, it's been a minute. I can't remember the last time I showed compassion to someone, but yeah.
Why do you think that's important? What makes that important? How did you feel when someone showed you compassion, and what do you think you can do to be more compassionate? And I think you giving yourself not as much credit, because you did some volunteer work recently, didn't you?
Yes.
That's for compassion.
And let me say this, Isaiah, when you show up in a space like this and have the courage and the audacity at 14 years old to come into a digital space where there could be hundreds or thousands of people listening, and you step into that, you're showing compassion because you want something to go forth to us and to those people that will help them. That is a form of compassion, or else you would never even agree to do it. So you're being compassionate. It is a part of who you are.
That's good. That's good.
Yeah. Yeah, you are. You got it in you, Zay. Anybody else with thoughts on compassion before I move on to the next question? I think it's so important because it seems like that's something that seems to be missing a lot. Where I hear Black men maybe feeling looked over or left out in that. Who cares about the Black man?
Yeah.
Speak to that.
I struggle. Go ahead.
Thank you, man. Yes, sir. When I think about compassion, I think about, identifying what a person might need in that moment, whatever that might look like. I think I was recently watching an interview with Jason Wilson. He was speaking to the artist Lecrae. He was talking about Black boys don't need more discipline; they need love. And that was one of the things that he realized in his martial arts practice, where he was, working with a lot of young boys. It's the same brother. If y'all, are not familiar, there was a video that went viral of a young boy, in his class trying to break one of those wooden boards. And he couldn't do it, and he started crying. And he came down to the boy's level. He was talking to him, trying to figure out why he was crying, trying to work with him, through that experience that might have been stressful or emotional for him. Fast forward, he said, the reason why that even took place was because, there was an instance in his life, where his mom was going through dementia, and, because he was dealing with that stress, he opened up and started crying in front of his students one day, and that allowed them to then in turn, express their emotions to him, and create that more, that healthy dynamic. But in that, he learned that before that he was all disciplined, no emotional intelligence, no this, that, and the third, and he learned to identify what a person needed, that would help them, get to where they wanted to be or help them grow. And so when I think about compassion, I think about identifying what it is a person needs that can help them grow. Just recently, Baba had gave me a call, and when we finished the call, he was like, I hope, that doesn't sound like an old man, just getting on you or whatever he had said. But, having somebody, that can hold you accountable, that's compassion to me, that can look at you and say, I understand what you might be going through, and I understand what you might need in this moment that can help you. That's compassion to me. Just yesterday I was on the bus, and there was this lady that got on the bus, and she was just very like giving she was silently sobbing, like I could hear her out. It was real quiet, and we in public, we on public transportation. I don't know her, she don't know me, but I was feeling for her, and I didn't want to make a big scene out of it, but I also didn't want to think so highly of myself that I'm about to solve her problems in that moment, or get self-important, so to say, in that moment. So I didn't really say nothing to her, but on my stop I had got off, and real quick I just said a word to her. I said, I know I don't know you, but I think I said, I hope you feel better, or something like that. And I tapped on the shoulder just to check the temperature, and she seemed open to that embrace. And so then I asked her, I was like, can I give you a hug? And she let me hug her, and she just started crying even deeper, just on me real quick. And I tried to just acknowledge her in that moment. I'm reading a book right now. I'm sorry to get so long with it. I'm reading a book right now called The Healing Wisdom of Africa. I think Malidoma Patrice Somé is the author. He speaks about how oftentimes, in a person's journey, they have these initiatory experiences where, it can be a shock to the system. It can be traumatic. It can be, what a catalyst for, a process of maturation in their life, or it can be, an experience in their life that causes them a deep level of trauma that never gets healed. And oftentimes the reason why it doesn't get healed is because it doesn't get acknowledged by the community, so to say, as an experience in a life that that had such a drastic impact on them. And then if they don't get that recognition, they continue to re-experience that until they get that acknowledgement that they're looking for. They get that reconciliation to that experience that they're looking for. So I try to implement that in that instance where I'm acknowledging this person because I want them to be able to heal from this experience. I want to be able to help them close that chapter in their life, and I think that's what compassion looks like to me. Identifying what a person might need and trying to be that to the best of your ability. And I'm
Thank you for that.
It's awesome.
Very awesome. You gave us a short master class on compassion. And that really brings me to the question about Dr. King and his legacy. In what ways are you seeing his legacy being lived out today? What does it mean to you? And what is the hope it gives us for the future?
Yeah, I'll jump in quick just because I know my favorite quote of all time comes from Dr. King when he said, the ultimate measure of a man is not where he stands in the moments of comfort and convenience, but where he stands at times of challenge and controversy. That's something that I kind of wear on my sleeve, and it's to my core, right? How can I continue to be resilient? And I think that's something, as we talk amongst Black men, how we look to advance the ball with what we need to do as a sub-demographic, that resiliency, it's here. I can look around this panel and I know it's a panel full of dogs right now, right? That, wherever steps you all take, that's how we're going to show up. And that's how we're going to continue to lead that influence and lead that change that we need to see and that we need to advocate for our legacy. And I really think, funny enough, Dr. King and the term legacy are both synonymous because all of his work, he didn't do for him. He was doing for the legacy of his grandkids and for all of us, 50, 100, 150 years down the line. So I hope he'd be proud of where we are today. I know he will be, but I also know, and I think we all know, there's a lot of work that needs to be done. So all of us are probably taking a fraction of Dr. King's work, in our daily lives. And even if it's waking up and for me, looking at that quote every day and saying, hey, how am I going to be better, not just for myself, but those that, might depend on me or those that might be coming after me, and what impact does that generate? That's something that, at least for me, was monumental. And I think, how we all continue to move, as a collective, right? We talk about uniformity. That's something that I think Dr. King's work is extremely rooted in. So.
Thank you. I love one of my quotes from Dr. King is, one of them. I got so many of them. Of course, it's now when I have these two boys with me, I have my son and Isaiah is my nephew. So I'm always the time to do right. It's always the right time to do right. That's a constant one for me when I'm with these two young boys. But thank you for that. Another one of mine is right evenly triumphant. Right temporarily defeated is better than evil triumphant. And that was one line he had when he accepted his Nobel Peace Prize, and that will stick with me. That sometimes we might get knocked down in the moment while we're trying to do the right thing. As long as evil is not the winner overall, take that, knock down, and get back up. That's how I see it. But someone else on the legacy and life of Dr. King, what does it mean to you now? How do you see it at work? And then what hopes do you think it brings for us into the future?
Yeah,
trying-
I think, oh, go ahead, Joe. You good, bro?
I was just gonna say real quick, I'm trying to succinctly gather my thoughts because like Dr. King means so much to me. I've been a student of his work for the majority of my life. And like I love how unapologetic he was in his identity and in his purpose and his calling. Like he was like, yo, I'm about Black liberation, right? I want to free my people. And he also understood the necessity for these multiracial coalitions, right? And one of my favorite quotes is he says that those who love peace must learn to organize as effectively as those who love war. And before he was assassinated, he was organizing a strike with sanitation workers, and he was working on like the class struggle. And I think that the last, I'll try to leave on this note, but I think that like some of the things he was moving towards the end of his life is what I really hope that we continue to pay attention to and build on. Because it's still needed. Like he didn't finish, right? It was like he said, I've been to the mountaintop, but we ain't on the mountain yet. And so we still gotta climb, we still gotta work, you feel me? And so yeah, I hope that we continue to organize and continue to study his genius methodologies and teachings and preachings so that we can carry that forward today, because we still need it. And I feel like we are making way, right? But we still got a long way to go. And so I think the best way to honor him is to continue his work.
Yeah, I'm with you all day on that, Joe. Brian, what you mentioned as well. When I think about King's legacy is so rich, so it's hard to, sometimes think, about one particular space or way in which you kind of see his legacy, carrying you, or you, in a way that you want to carry his legacy. I think about him. I think one person can make a difference when I think about King. So often as Black men, we can find, and women, but Black men specifically too, since that's the topic of the discussion, we can find ourselves in spaces as the only one, in career or in certain social spaces, trying to do the right thing or trying to stand for some particular just cause, or just kind of trying to show up as a Black man, and being, confident in who you are in the face of, adversity or so many different things in your community and in your life that may be speaking or trying to, convince you that that might not be the case. So I think that the reality is, one person can make a difference. King always showed up, and he wasn't alone in his battle. He wasn't alone in this fight for equality and justice. But he was convinced that, he would always show up. He would always stand for and fight for what was right. And so often it can be hard. You can feel like you're on an island, as a Black person. Like, I'm the only one. Like, I can't do this on my own, right? Or I don't see it. Ain't nobody else, out here trying to do it the way that I'm doing it in my community and my family, in the workspace that I'm showing up in. Sometimes you can have this propensity to want to say, well, not today. Like I ain't showing up for what's right today. I'm trying to look out for me and I'm gonna get mine. And I just want, the thing that I'm reminded of is that, wherever he was and however he showed up, he was 10 toes. He was standing on business, as we say, with regard to what the fight was truly about. And that was about equality. It was about justice. It was about, moral righteousness. And I'm just reminded to show up in every way at each time, whether I'm alone or whether I'm locking arms with brothers like you all, that I'm going to continue to fight for what's right, and push that needle every chance and every opportunity that I get, even in the moments where I feel like I might be alone in that fight, because the reality is somebody's watching, and somebody is that you might not be aware of, maybe taking their cues from you. And it's important for whoever that might be to know that you are dedicated to that cause, so they can be convinced in themselves that it is indeed the right thing to do as well. So that's what I think of when I think about King and his legacy.
Thank you for sharing, Aaron.
Yeah, I have a lot of thoughts when I think about Dr. King, or I affectionately call him Brother Dr. King. I have the privilege of being a member of his fraternity, as I like to say, and it just speaks to the deeper sense of his calling. A lot of what he did, a lot of his sacrifice reminds me that, you know, systemically we have been boxed in and kept out of certain spaces, but it's by divine purpose that we get our access and our freedom. And just seeing what he was able to do. And I really want to echo, I believe this was Brother Joe who said this earlier. Dr. King was definitely about Black rights and Black liberation, but ultimately that's human rights. Because when we're free, when we get what we need, everybody gets what they need. And I'm very touched by his concept of beloved community. I think just from a programmatic perspective, the idea that everyone has access to what they need. There's no hunger, there's no poverty or violence, but you know, ultimately that just speaks to seeing people as people. And I just think about a lot of the stuff that we've talked about. Ultimately, like we as Black men, we just want to be seen. I think Black men just want to be seen as human. They want to have the right to be vulnerable, to have those moments, but still not be seen as weak. And I think especially, I love where we're going, where there's more of a voice being built around mental wellness and mental health, especially with Black men. I think as a community, we have this habit of not speaking about certain things that we deem as taboo, or that have been hurtful or traumatic to us, but it only divides us more. So I hope that, you know, we continue to break the silence. I pray to continue to be a part of that movement that breaks the silence and, you know, just shows more of the versatility of who we are as men and as people.
Thank you so much. I could sit here and learn from you all and I see really deep conversations all day. And I thank you so much for offering your brilliance to this conversation today, your heart to this conversation today. I really hope that when people get a chance to watch the replay, it will prove to have been helpful and beneficial. We get to this point in our panel where I allow you all, the panel guests, to ask questions of another panelist from a different generation. So what question do you have in your heart or mind that you would like one of your fellow panelists to answer? Hopefully you have had the wheels turning since you've been engaged with us now for this past hour. And so Aaron, I see you're ready to go. So I will let you kick off that first question to another panelist. Now, every panelist may not get a chance just with time to put out their question, but I would definitely want to have at least, you know, 3 of you all sharing a question to another panelist to answer. So Aaron, go ahead.
Yeah, real quick, just before I forget, Jakai, can you say the name of the book that you were reading one more time?
Yes, sir. It's called The Healing Wisdom of Africa by,
Okay.
I think the name is Malidoma Patrice Somé. I'll drop it in the comments.
All right, thank you. And I was just curious in general, what is everyone reading right now? I appreciate that again, Jakai. Thank you.
The Holy Bible. I ain't really had a chance to squeeze in. No, yeah, for me, you're right. It's I've been going there for strategy and wisdom as of late. So I'm reading it a different way, not just to kind of remember or rehearse verses, but to find some true divine strategies and kind of some of the things that I'm facing or I'm anticipating moving into.
Go ahead, Jakai. Oh, you put that in the chat box. You want to raise
Mhm.
your hand. Never mind. Joe Davis, go ahead with your question.
Yeah, I actually do got a question. So, I mean, I have been always reading the scriptures too, but just tap in on what I've been reading. There's this book called Finding Radical Wholeness. I'm kind of vibing off of that too. And then a book by their sister, Christine Plath, called Afro Minimalist. I'm like kind of finding new ways to like let go of things I don't need and really get deep into what I do need. And this sister is like brilliant with that. But my question is for young brother Isaiah. I work with a lot of youth, and I'm just curious, like, what do you think is needed to support you and other young folks? Like, you're the next generation, you're the emerging hope, the emerging leaders. Like, I want to create more space for y'all and to empower you and liberate you. And so, like, what is it that you think you need? And maybe some of your friends and peers, like, what can we do as an older generation? What can we offer you or give to you or create for you that you feel would meet a need? I'm just curious to learn that.
I feel like me or my generation, we need like more support because it's the generation that I live in. It's like the kids they not going to school, they not learning. They kids, but they trying to be adults. It's like we need more actual adults to help us like fix it. I don't know how to explain, but like more support from an older generation.
We definitely appreciate that. Yeah, absolutely.
That's good. That's real.
Any?
I have a
Can
question.
I follow up
Yeah.
with that?
Please do.
Isaiah, you got one specific way adults can show you support?
I don't know, like maybe creating programs for like the kids can interact with each other instead of like being on the street doing things they're not supposed to, like make them like interact with other people that's in the same situation that they are in.
That's good.
Thank you, Isaiah.
You know, my question would be to the older generation, as you kind of see, you know, represented here, a couple of generations behind you. You know, if there are certain, you know, pitfalls that you would, you know, warn against that you might see our generation or the generations behind mine, even I'm in the millennial camp. Is there any sort of, you know, warnings or, you know, sort of, you know, guidance or direction that you give for our generations coming behind you so we don't re-walk or reroute the mistakes of the generation ahead of us? I can't even think of a list to kind of give, but any that might come to thought for my generation, for those on the panel who are generations above me, as a question I'd ask.
You want to go, Brad? It's on me. All right. Well, I would definitely go right to fundamentally not becoming comfortable. One of the biggest pitfalls, errors, sins of my generation and the generation above me was the level of comfort that came with historically, you know, with integration, with opportunity, with aspirations to enter what we consider to be the American dream, and many of the other things that came along with that when we're talking about the mid to late 70s into the early 80s. With that, being able to recognize as many of us have been stating throughout this conversation, the institutional, the systemic elements of racism that are inherent, being able to recognize the internalized racism that continues to live within us, to not deny it, to not act as if it doesn't exist. I think it's critical that we keep that type of motion alive that type of agency alive, because it was a major mistake of our generation and has led to many of the negative social indicators that we're dealing with currently. So in a nutshell, I would say that to begin with.
Yeah, I'll piggyback on that and just say that know the difference between making sacrifices and being the sacrifice. I think too often when we look at leadership that's might be viewed as anti-establishment, it puts us into a fear of martyrdom. And I think that's a falsehood, you know, because I think we can be as powerfully effective without having to be the martyr mindset, you know. And then along with that too, I think that just stand on your square, you know. Don't be swayed by the rhetoric of whatever the popular culture has to say. I mean, there's this transhumanism and everything else that's going on is it's about decimating Blackness at the end of the day, you know. And so just stand on your square and don't be swayed by the rhetoric, because everybody on this panel is anti-establishment.
For real deal.
Thank you. I think we got room for one more question.
All right, this is my question right here for everybody. When we gonna do this again? You know what I'm saying? How we gonna keep this movement you know, going strong? You know what I'm saying? Like, I think this is a unique space that's necessary. I'm not saying we got to do the exact same thing again. I just hope we can stay connected and continue to build. This is beautiful. So yeah.
It's fun.
Rhonda, should we share information in this chat? Contact information, or what do you think?
Yeah,
is
you
best?
sure can. You can
Because I would just like to leave any information in case anyone ever.
You all are connected on the email chain as well.
Okay.
They also put in the chat that battle cry, Winning the Battle Within, by Jason Wilson. It's a short read, but it's dense and substantive in its content, and it kind of deals with emotional maturity, dealing with the after effects of trauma, and being able to move forward without being toxic.
Which is hard. Which can be hard.
It's a journey.
Yeah. You know, I'd be glad to share information with you, brothers, as well. Rhonda, you might have a series on your hand. But yeah, I always encourage, and I think, you know, Bob is, you know, has shown up as a phenomenal example of this. You know, it sounds like he's, you know, intentionally pursuing relationships and, you know, with individuals, you know, pursuing being a mentor. And it's something that I'm trying to learn how to do in my life as well, and hopes to your question, Joe, continue to perpetuate conversations in spaces like this. You know, maybe we're the next host. You know, maybe Rhonda, you know, continues to do this in her own regard and invites us back. But, you know, I'm trying to learn myself, or to be dedicated rather to, you know, opening myself up to being a bit more available to host or to continue to push, you know, conversations like this myself. So I think it's a good question. I think it's a good challenge, and we might be the answer.
Yeah, I like that. I'm totally okay with a part 2, us being live and in person. I got some things turning in the back of my head about that. So hopefully, if all things line up, we can do it again. But we are coming to a close on our time. I just want to thank each of you for agreeing to giving up some of your Saturday morning to help kick off this King holiday weekend as we look forward to King Day. We know a lot of things are happening on that day. We want to just keep alive, as I think someone said, standing 10 toes down on the life and legacy of Dr. King and what he was hoping to do. That's what we keep moving towards, keep marching towards, figuratively and literally. I know folks gonna be on the ground Monday marching in DC. making that pledge. It's a pledge to say we will honor and keep alive the legacy of Dr. King, no matter what. And so I hope this can be seen as my part and my way of making that ongoing commitment to keep hope that his legacy and honoring it to bring us all together, but also on that, to me, our humanity, really standing in our humanity. We are people. I see you Black men as my brothers, not the enemy. You are men to be respected, worthy of love and compassion, worthy to be heard and seen in the ways that you want to be seen, and hopefully in a way that is in dignity and lived out, helps you to live out your full humanity. And so with that, I just thank you all for being here. I thank those who were getting through this sketchy live stream. I'm sorry, it's my first time ever trying to stream live in that way. I promise you a replay is coming and the video will be fully functional and working. So if you were sitting through the choppiness, the Lord bless you. I also want to say that this was made possible through grant support from the ELCA and their authentic diversity efforts. And so I'm thankful and grateful for the support for the Evangelical Lutheran Church in America and the ongoing push for true efforts to highlight Black voices in diverse ways, this way being one of them. Thank you to our community champions. People saw you and thought you were worth mentioning. You will hear from me. And to all of you guys on the panel, you're going to get your nice little gift from me as my way of saying thank you. I appreciate you. I love you, Black man. Let's keep up the good work. And just remember, you all, we all really do have something to say. Take the time.